It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are...
Hello, family. Welcome to Journeys of Faith Super Saints podcast. Brother Joseph Fry Aldenhoven here at your service. Be sure to look at the description for special information of interest to you. And Saint Joseph Vaz, Apostle of Sri Lanka and defender of the Eucharist. In the tapestry of Catholic history, radiant threads of sanctity shine brightest in times of trial. Among these, few are as bold and heroic as Saint Joseph Vaz, the Apostle of Sri Lanka and steadfast defender of the Most Holy Eucharist. For those of us at Journeys of Faith, whose mission is to draw souls ever deeper into the Eucharistic mystery and the embrace of Holy Mother Church, the life and witness of Saint Joseph Vaz stand as both a challenge and an invitation. How does one remain fervently loyal to the teachings of the magisterium, and yet bold enough to defy hostile powers for the sake of Christ? Saint Joseph Vaz, kindled by heavenly zeal and fortified by sacrificial love, journeyed alone into lands hostile to the Catholic faith. By the world's account, he was outnumbered and outmatched by both persecuting overlords and pagan superstitions. Yet it was in those hidden, dangerous moments, offering the holy sacrifice in secret chapels, carrying viaticum by lantern light through jungles, baptizing the persecuted, where his union with the Lord in the Eucharist burned brightest. Heaven's treasures, as Saint Joseph Vaz's life so wondrously proves, are not found in comfort or acclaim, but in childlike trust, courageous faith, and unyielding devotion to Christ truly present in the Blessed Sacrament. As you journey with us through the life of this humble yet heroic priest, may the story of Saint Joseph Vaz ignite a new fervor for the Eucharist within your soul. Let his example fan your desire for sanctification, and his unwavering loyalty to the Church embolden your own fidelity to the magisterium. For we, too, are called to be missionaries, even cyber apostles, bringing the light of the real presence to a world in desperate need of it. May Saint Joseph Vaz, priest and apostle, intercede for us on our journey to heaven as one heart, one mind, one spirit, with one vision of early life in Goa and call to holiness. Saint Joseph Vaz was born in 1651 in the lush village of Benaulim, Goa, a sunlit crossroads where the incense of Catholic faith mingled with the drumbeats of Portuguese and Indian cultures. His parents, devout Catholics, instilled in him from infancy that we are exiles on earth born for heaven. His earliest memories entwined with the cadence of rosaries and Eucharistic processions that swept through dusty streets. Vaz's heart beat with a burning desire, not for earthly honor, but for a pearl of great price, sanctity. From the very beginning, young Joseph displayed a singular purity and hunger for God. When other children ran through fields, Joseph knelt with childlike faith at the family altar. He would often be found in the cool, shadowed hush of the village chapel, gazing at the tabernacle with wide-eyed wonder, enthralled by the mystery of Christ's real presence. The Catechism tells us the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. G1, 3, 2, 4. For Joseph Vaz, even as a child, this was not mere doctrine, it was breath and lifeblood. His call to holiness was unmistakable, carried on the prayers of his mother and the hands of his father, who guided him to daily mass and works of mercy. Joseph's burning love for the Eucharist and unwavering loyalty to the magisterium drew fellow villagers, young and old, whose faith had grown languid. His example echoed St. Paul's exhortation to the Thessalonians. This is the will of God, your sanctification, 1 Thessalonians 4:3. Each act, each fervent prayer was a laying up of treasures in heaven. Vaz's path to sanctity was not without struggle, persecution, uncertainty, and poverty marked the Catholic experience in Goa, yet he pressed on, forming himself by prayer, study, and mortification. The saints before him, Augustine, Clare Shenchi, Gikin Singh, Clare Cheers Francis became his models. He learned to see every suffering as a gift, every hardship as a ladder to union with Christ. In these hidden years, God was crafting an apostle whose heart would one day burn for a distant land, Sri Lanka, the pearl of the Indian Ocean, starved for the bread of life. Journey deeper with Saint Joseph Vaz. Join our mission for the Eucharist. Are you moved by the heroic witness of Saint Joseph Vaz, the apostle of Sri Lanka and defender of the Eucharist? At Journeys of Faith, our hearts burn with the same longing to rekindle Eucharistic love, ignite sanctification, and awaken loyalty to the magisterium, just as Saint Joseph Vaz did amid persecution and darkness. Through our mission, you can go beyond inspiration, step into participation. Here's what you can do today. Explore more saintly lives. Dive into our best-selling books, including stories of the Eucharistic miracles that transformed our founders' lives. Embark on a virtual pilgrimage. Walk the way of the cross. Pray the rosary mysteries and meditate in our holy house of Laredo replica, all from home. Nourish your soul. Discover Catholic media, DVDs, ebooks, audiobooks, and treasures for every season, steeped in Orthodox teaching and heaven-focused hope. Bring home faith reminders, shop holy cards, statues, medals, and unique gifts bearing witness to the triumph of the Eucharist. Retreat and renew. Visit or support our Holy Family Mission and Saint Joseph Retreat Center, a haven for childlike faith, reverent prayer, and unity of spirit. Join us, become a torchbearer of Eucharistic revival, one heart, one mind, one spirit, with one vision. Formation and vows within the Oratory of St. Philip Neri. Saint Joseph Vaz's journey of sanctity took a profound turn when, drawn by the fervor of apostolic community, he discerned his call within the Oratory of St. Philip Neri in Goa. The Oratory, renowned for its deep Eucharistic devotion and radical charity, served as the crucible in which Joseph's heart was further purified and set aflame for Christ. Docility, humility, and obedience were the pillars of his formation, echoing St. Philip's own charism. Serve the Lord with laughter and joy. The formation process was intense and deeply rooted in prayer. Long vigils before the Blessed Sacrament fostered an interior hunger for the Eucharist, an anchor amid the tempests of future persecution. Joseph Vaz embraced a life marked by poverty, chastity, and missionary zeal, not by formal religious vows, but by the interior bond of love characteristic of Oratorians, a family bound together not by solemn profession, but by the Holy Spirit and unwavering fidelity to Christ and his church. Convinced that sanctification must begin with himself, Joseph engaged in daily acts of penance, fasting, serving the sick, teaching catechism to neglected souls. The magisterium was his compass, the Eucharist his lifeline. He surrendered his will entirely to the mission God would soon reveal, animated by a longing for heaven and a burning desire to carry the real presence to the persecuted faithful. Empathy for the marginalized and relentless prayer shaped him into a shepherd after the Sacred Heart, destined to sow the seeds of faith in Sri Lanka's dark hours. Burning zeal for the missions of Ceylon. Saint Joseph Vaz's mission to Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka, stands as a flame of faith that pierced a land shadowed by persecution and spiritual famine. At the close of the 17th century, Portuguese missionaries had been expelled, churches destroyed, and clergy exiled by Dutch Calvinist authorities. The faithful were left pastoral orphans, deprived of the sacraments, especially the Holy Eucharist, the very summit and source of Christian life. With a heart ablaze for the salvation of souls and loyalty to the magisterium, Joseph Vaz answered heaven's call. Disguised as a beggar, he slipped onto Ceylon's hostile shores, risking his life at every turn. He traveled barefoot, braving jungle, malaria, and monsoon, compelled by the conviction that Christ's body and blood must not be denied to his people. Vaz became a living icon of the Good Shepherd seeking the lost and fortifying the hidden church. Despite relentless surveillance and threat of death, he secretly celebrated the Holy Mass, baptized, anointed the sick, and preached Christ crucified. Night after night in candlelit huts, he brought the most blessed sacrament to hunger, starved Catholics, renewing faith, hope, and love in their hearts. To guard the sacred mysteries, he carried the Eucharist concealed, ready to defend with his life the real presence that lay hidden beneath humble appearances of bread and wine. Saint Joseph Vaz raised up local catechists, catechumens, and underground Catholic communities, ebbing away despair with every sacramental encounter. His burning zeal lit the way for a vibrant Catholic revival, planting seeds that blossomed into contemporary Sri Lanka's living church. Like Christ, he emptied himself for the sanctification of souls, his unwavering gaze fixed always on heaven. Secret arrival under Dutch Calvinist persecution, Sri Lanka at the dusk of the 17th century had become a battleground for souls. Dutch Calvinists held the coastal strongholds, enforcing a strict ban on Catholic worship. Churches were demolished and priests banished. The Eucharist, heaven itself, hidden under the veil of bread and wine, was outlawed as idolatry. Yet in this darkness, Saint Joseph Vaz landed, concealed, cloak and dagger, like a hero in an age when faithful hearts risked everything for a glimpse of the sacraments. His arrival was a masterwork of sanctified cunning. Disguised as a humble laborer, Joseph Vaz moved silently past sentries and checkpoints. He traveled barefoot, clothed in rags, passed off not as a priest from Goa, but as one of the many nameless refugees adrift in a land of suspicion. All the while, he kept close to his breast the most precious treasure on earth, the Holy Eucharist, hidden so God's faithful would not starve spiritually. The Catholics of Ceylon, shorn of priests for years, lived underground, preserving the faith in whispered rosaries and midnight gatherings. Vaz sought them out, learning their secret signs and knock codes. Each hidden mass he celebrated was a triumph, a defiant act of worship, a burst of heaven's light in the shadow lands of persecution. He restored baptism, heard long unconfessed sins, and, climax of all, brought back the sacrifice of the Mass, making present on hostile soil the very body and blood, soul and divinity of Christ. For Saint Joseph Vaz, the hazards were unrelenting. Captured priests had faced torture or exile, yet for him, the commands of the magisterium and his love for the sanctification of souls outweighed any threat. He would kneel in mud huts and candlelit caverns to consecrate the Eucharist, risking execution so his flock, children, elders, widows could receive the bread of angels. In every act, he declared with passion and unwavering faith, the Eucharist is the source and summit of our lives, and no earthly persecution would ever quench the thirst for Jesus truly present among his people. Reestablishing the sacraments in hidden Catholic villages. The landscape of 17th century Sri Lanka was marked by dense jungles, treacherous footpaths, and the ever-present threat of persecution. Amidst this peril, Saint Joseph Vaz risked his very life to bring the treasures of the church back to the forsaken Catholic faithful. Missionary priests had been banished, public worship forbidden, the mere possession of a rosary or holy medal punishable by death. Yet the hunger for the bread of life did not wither. It grew fiercer. With a heart aflame for the Eucharist, Joseph Vaz disguised himself as a poor laborer, moving under the cover of darkness, guided only by the flickering hope in the eyes of villagers awaiting their secret shepherd. In huts, dimly lit by coconut oil lamps, he celebrated the Holy Mass for the first time in years, letting the words of consecration, "This is my body, this is my blood," fall gently upon hearts battered by spiritual famine. Baptisms, confessions, marriages, and burials, these means of grace so often taken for granted, became acts of heroic faith, each sacrament a battle won for heaven amidst earthly oppression. He found entire villages whispering the rosary in hushed voices, catechizing their children from tattered remnants of prayer books. Saint Joseph Vaz saw in them living tabernacles, holding fast to Christ in their souls, hungry for sanctification, but threatened by despair. With unwavering loyalty to the magisterium and his heart riveted on the things above, he instructed them, exhorted them, and poured out his life so that the sacraments, visible signs of invisible grace, would once again flood their humble homes, restoring hope and sanctity in the most hidden corners of the island. Defender of the Eucharist against heresy and sacrilege. Saint Joseph Vaz, burning with apostolic zeal, stood as a bulwark against heresy and sacrilege in the windswept mission fields of Sri Lanka. At a time when the Eucharist was persecuted, forbidden, and hidden, he risked all to safeguard the real presence of Christ. His adversaries were not only government authorities intent on quashing Catholic worship, but also the gnawing thread of spiritual indifference and corrupted doctrine. Clandestinely under the shroud of night and danger, Father Vaz traversed jungle thickets and hostile towns. He secretly celebrated Mass in humble huts or makeshift chapels, ensuring the faithful could adore and receive the Blessed Sacrament. Whenever soldiers or authorities swept through in search of priests, he often disguised himself as a beggar, priestly vestments and consecrated hosts hidden in a satchel close to his heart. The Catholic faithful, hungry for the bread of heaven, huddled in small flocks, risking their own lives for a taste of the divine. With unwavering fidelity to the magisterium, Saint Joseph Vaz catechized against the errors of Calvinism and Dutch Reformed doctrine, defending the sacred mystery of the Eucharist, Christ present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. For him, the Blessed Sacrament was not symbol or metaphor, but the heavenly treasure entrusted to his hands for sanctification of God's people. Many reported miracles surrounded his masses, healings, conversions, and Eucharistic wonders, testifying to the river of grace poured forth through this faithful servant. In every trial, he clung to the truth proclaimed in the Catechism: the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. His defense was not only one of argument or intellect, but one of total surrender. Saint Joseph Vaz's life was a living witness to the holy grandeur and the costly obedience owed to Christ in the Eucharist. He formed the persecuted into a Eucharistic people, teaching them to treasure every Mass, every host as a foretaste of heaven, and to suffer gladly for so great a gift. Miraculous reign in Kandy, God's seal on his ministry. The story of Saint Joseph Vaz unfolds with the majesty of a biblical epic, nowhere more resplendently than amid the hills of Kandy. It was here, swept up in the drama of persecution, that the holy priest's unwavering love for Christ and the Eucharist would provoke a miracle to confound the proud and console the faithful. The land was parched, not just spiritually, for Catholic worship was forbidden under the suspicious Kandyan king, but physically. A merciless drought scorched the valley to its bones. With his flock starving and despair closing in, Vaz hosted clandestine masses, each act of worship a sealed pact with the Lord, a challenge to the blight of unbelief. Hope flickered. Could the God whose body and blood they adored shatter the iron rule of circumstances? As the famine peaked, the king's court challenged Joseph Vaz to pray for rain. Should he fail, it would mean not just disgrace, but likely death, a living martyrdom before the very Eucharist he served. The saint knelt before the altar bareheaded under the pitiless sky and invoked Christ truly present in the Blessed Sacrament. Hundreds of eyes, loyal villagers, skeptical guards, silent spies, fixed on the priest and the monstrance he held aloft. He prayed not as a wizard casting spells, but as a son trusting a loving father. The heavens responded with a torrent that astonished all. Thunder rolled like organ pipes in a cathedral, and rain thrashed the parched earth as parishioners wept with joy and non-believers marveled in awe. Onlookers testifying later swore the ground around the Eucharist remained dry, a divine sign that the Lord source and summit of our faith, was not only present but reigning. Through this miracle, the Eucharist emerged triumphant not merely as ritual, but as living fire, a sign that God sanctifies, saves, and shepherds his people even in exile. The king relented, hearts were softened, and holy devotion was rekindled as heaven sealed its approval upon the ministry of Saint Joseph Vaz, crossing flooded rivers and jungles in apostolic poverty. Saint Joseph Vaz, armed with nothing but an unquenchable zeal for Christ and profound trust in providence, embodied the true spirit of apostolic poverty. Deprived of worldly comforts, he clothed himself simply, sometimes barefoot, as he traversed the lush but perilous jungles and swollen, crocodile laden rivers of 17th century Sri Lanka. Orphaned missionary outposts and scattered flocks lived in perpetual fear of arrest. Foreign Catholic priests were banned, and locals faced death for sheltering them. Danger shadowed every step Joseph Vaz took, yet his missionary path blazed bravely through the muddy, torrential rivers and tangled wilderness. He would journey by night to evade Dutch Calvinist authorities, led by faith rather than maps, guided, as so many witnesses reported, by the star of the Eucharist burning in his heart. Vaz carried with him only essential vestments and the sacred vessels necessary to confect the Blessed Sacrament, trekking hungry and weary for miles, often fasting, sometimes falling feverishly ill, but never letting go of his mission's urgency. It was not merely physical obstacles that challenged him, it was isolation, deprivation, and the constant threat of betrayal. Still, Joseph Vaz pressed on, holding tightly to the cross and the promise of heaven. The hidden Catholics of Sri Lanka found in him their shepherd, risking their homes to host secret masses at midnight as Vaz moved from village to village, baptizing infants, reconciling sinners, and strengthening the Eucharistic faith that was their life and light. He was, for a persecuted people, a living icon of Christ, pouring himself out as a libation for the souls he encountered in the storm-darkened rainforest. Eucharistic processions in the jungle night. Imagine the moonless darkness of Sri Lanka's forest, mangroves looming, snakes lurking, soldiers on the prowl for banned missionaries. Into this perilous hush strode Saint Joseph Vaz, clutching a monstrance at his breast, his heart on fire for the hidden Christ. Surrounded by a threadbare, whispered congregation, he pressed forward through the jungle night, every step a defiant act of faith and love. For the Catholic faithful starved of sacraments after Portuguese expulsion, the Eucharist, veiled, secret, staggering in its intimacy, became their sole sustenance. St. Joseph Vaz knew that to abandon the holy sacrifice of the Mass was unthinkable, so he risked his life again and again to bring Jesus in the tiny white host to the poor, the sick, the dying. Sometimes half a dozen faithful would kneel in muddy clearings as Vaz, shoeless and haggard, raised the consecrated host above his head amid a chorus of cicadas and distant drums. Every clandestine Eucharistic procession through thorn and shadow became a sanctuary. Torches sputtered, and the villagers, children, mothers, the elderly, prostrated themselves, aware they stood on holy ground. The real presence pierced the suffocating fear and isolation with celestial light. Vaz's courage was mystical, a loyalty to the church and her sacrament so complete it blazed like an unquenchable beacon in the blackness. Each procession was not mere survival, but an act of Eucharistic recreation, a foretaste of heaven echoing the Catechism's teaching. The Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. In the hearts of Vaz and his flock, sanctification was painfully, gloriously alive. The jungle, for one brief moment, reverberated with the joy song of the angels and with the silent sacrificial love of a priest unshakably loyal to the magisterium, leading souls homeward on the narrow and royal road to eternal life. Imprisonments, trials, and providential escapes. The mission of Saint Joseph Vaz was not embarked upon from a place of comfort or assurance. Far from it. The apostle of Sri Lanka's journey is cast upon a drama of persecutions, betrayals, and moments of apparent defeat. Time and again, his faith would be tested not only by those who opposed him, but by harsh circumstances that threatened the very survival of the Catholic faith on the island. Saint Joseph Vaz arrived in Sri Lanka disguised as a laborer, forbidden to minister publicly since Catholicism was outlawed under Dutch Calvinist rule. He was hunted, arrested, and interrogated. His every Mass was a clandestine celebration of the Eucharist, a defiant act of love hidden beneath the veil of night. When discovered by authorities, he was imprisoned, sometimes chained, and denied even the basic necessities. Yet the flicker of the sanctuary lamp, the sacramental presence of Christ, remained his sustenance. And miraculously, these moments of suffering were transformed into turning points. In a dark, airless cell at Kandy, abandoned by all but the Virgin Mary, Joseph Vaz offered up his hunger and solitude as spiritual currency for the beleaguered church. Mysterious events unfolded. Guards who should have been vigilant turned inexplicably lenient. Locks broke or chains loosened. Unexplained opportunities for escape or forgiveness presented themselves. Each escape was less a feat of human ingenuity and more an undeniable manifestation of divine providence. Through deprivation and humiliation, Saint Joseph Vaz held fast to a singular conviction: the Eucharist is worth every trial. Even as he traversed the razor's edge between life and death, he inspired Catholics to sanctify suffering, drawing courage from the presence of the Blessed Sacrament and keeping their gaze set on heaven. His fidelity in persecution became a powerful witness, a living catechism written in blood, sweat, and prayer that no earthly power could extinguish. The flame of faith anchored in loyalty to the magisterium and the hope of eternal joy. Saint Joseph Vaz, a beacon for Eucharistic devotion in our times. In the unwavering witness of Saint Joseph Vaz, the Church finds a blazing torch of Eucharistic love igniting hearts across centuries and continents. His life, poured out in secret masses, clandestine catechesis, sacrificial service, and heroic fidelity to Christ's real presence, calls each of us to deeper sanctification and a bolder embrace of the gospel. Saint Joseph Vaz truly lived what our Lord revealed in John 6. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. He treasured the bread of angels above every earthly security. For devout Catholics journeying ever closer to heaven, Saint Joseph Vaz reminds us holiness flourishes in obedience to the Church and in fidelity to the Eucharist, the source and summit of our faith. Catechism 1324. When we kneel in adoration or serve those in spiritual hunger, we walk the same holy road as the Apostle of Sri Lanka. Journeys of Faith echoes his rallying cry: fix your eyes on eternity, cling to the sacraments, and live as obedient children of the magisterium. May Saint Joseph Vaz, loyal son of the Church, pray for us as we seek heavenly treasures. One heart, one mind, one spirit with one vision, all for the glory of God. Family, there is more to this article, so please see the link in the description for the rest of the article. Be sure to click the link in the description for special news item, and since there is more to this article, finish reading and check out the special offer. Visit journeysoffaith.com website today.
It's your journey, but we won't make the trip alone, 'cause we know God will lead us home. It's our journey of faith. It's our journey of faith.